The vintage Gibson Les Paul looked painfully out of place in Warren Grayson's hands, like a delicate butterfly caught in a vise. Hayley Keller winced as he fumbled another chord, his frustrated exhale filling her small music studio. She taught hundreds of students over the years, but never one who arrived in a chauffeur-driven Bentley wearing a watch that cost more than her annual rent. "I'm doing this wrong, aren't I?" Warren asked, his deep voice tinged with irritation. Not at her, she could tell, but at himself. His calloused fingers, unexpected for a millionaire, hovered uncertainly above the strings. "You're rushing," Hayley said gently. She reached over to reposition his hand, ignoring the unexpected flutter in her stomach when their skin touched. "Guitar isn't like acquiring companies, Mr. Grayson. You can't just throw money at it and expect overnight success." Warren's eyebrows shot up, and for a moment Hayley feared she'd overstepped. Then something unexpected happened. He laughed, a rich, warm sound that transformed his serious face. "Fair point, Miss Keller, and please call me Warren." "Mr. Grayson makes me sound like my father." Hayley smiled and picked up her own guitar. "Let's try again. Watch my fingers first." When Warren had called her studio 3 weeks ago, Hayley had almost hung up, thinking it was a prank. Warren Grayson, the real estate mogul whose name graced half the new buildings in the city skyline, wanted guitar lessons from her modest studio in a converted warehouse. His assistant had been insistent, explaining that Mr. Grayson had attended a charity event where Hayley had performed, and he'd been impressed by her playing. Now, watching him struggle with basic chord progressions with the determination of a man used to conquering every challenge, she was beginning to understand why he'd sought her out specifically. Unlike most beginning students, Warren didn't get discouraged. He treated each mistake as data, adjusting his approach methodically. "Better," she said after he successfully transitioned between chords. "You're a quick study." "Not quick enough," he muttered. "I've been successful at everything I've attempted in life except 2 things, playing an instrument and maintaining a relationship." He looked up suddenly, as if surprised by his own candor. "Sorry, oversharing with the guitar teacher wasn't on today's agenda." "It's fine," Hayley said, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. "Guitar lessons often double as therapy sessions. Something about music loosens people up." The timer on her phone chimed, signaling the end of their hour. "Same time next week?" she asked, standing to place her guitar in its stand. Warren nodded, carefully returning the Gibson to its case. "I appreciate your patience, Hayley. Most people in your position would be tempted to rush things along when dealing with someone like me. Someone like you. Someone who could buy this building without checking the price tag." He said it matter-of-factly, without arrogance. Hayley crossed her arms. "The notes don't care how much money you have, Warren. In this room, you're just another student." Something flickered in his eyes, respect, perhaps, or surprise. "That's precisely why I chose your studio. Your online reviews mentioned your no-nonsense approach and genuine passion for music. They weren't wrong." As Warren left, Hayley couldn't help but watch through the window as he climbed into his waiting car, wondering what had compelled a man who could have anything to suddenly decide he needed to learn guitar at 40. She didn't realize then that she had just met the man who would completely change the composition of her life. Warren returned the following week with calluses forming on his fingertips and a determination that both impressed and puzzled Hayley. He'd clearly practiced diligently, mastering the exercises she'd assigned. "You're making remarkable progress," she commented as he played through a simple melody without hesitation. "Most beginners take months to develop that finger independence." Warren set the guitar aside and flexed his hand. "I've been practicing during conference calls. My board members think I've developed a nervous habit." Hayley laughed, the sound bouncing off the exposed brick walls of her studio. "I'm not sure that's the intended use of meeting time. Trust me, most board meetings could benefit from a soundtrack." His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, softening his otherwise imposing presence. Besides, multitasking is how I built Grayson Developments. Speaking of which, he pulled out his phone and showed her an email. Would you be interested in playing at the opening of our newest building? We're hosting a charity gala next month, and the musician we booked just canceled. Hayley hesitated. I don't usually play corporate events. It pays $5,000 for a 2-hour set. Her eyes widened. That was more than 2 months of teaching income. It's for the Children's Hospital fundraiser, Warren added. And selfishly, I'd like to show off my talented teacher to my colleagues. I'll think about it, she promised, not wanting to appear too eager. He nodded, accepting her non-commitment with grace. Now, shall we continue with the lesson? I've been struggling with that bar chord transition. As they resumed, Hayley noticed how Warren's demeanor changed when he played the intense focus in his eyes, the way his perpetually rigid shoulders relaxed slightly. It was like watching someone slowly emerge from a shell they'd lived in for decades. What made you want to learn guitar now? She asked during a break. Most people start younger or after retirement. Warren was silent for a moment, his fingers tracing the wood grain of the guitar. My father played, he finally said. Not professionally, just for himself. When I was growing up, he'd play in the evenings after work. It was the only time he seemed content. He looked up at her. He died last year, heart attack at his desk. I realized I've spent 20 years building a company identical to his, working the same hours that killed him, and I don't have a single hobby that brings me joy. The raw honesty of his answer caught Hayley off guard. She'd expected something superficial, a midlife crisis, perhaps, or trying to impress someone. I'm sorry about your father, she said softly. Warren nodded. Thanks. He wasn't an easy man, but he had his moments. I found his old guitar in storage after the funeral. Couldn't bring myself to play it, though, so I bought that one. He gestured to his Gibson. Music has a way of healing things we didn't know were broken, Hayley offered. Their eyes met, and for a moment the air between them felt charged with something neither was ready to name. Warren cleared his throat. I should probably get going. I have a meeting across town. As he packed up, Hayley made a decision. About the gala, I'll do it. His smile was worth the anxiety she already felt about performing at such a high-profile event. After he left, she couldn't help but look up Warren Grayson online. Photos showed him cutting ribbons at building openings, shaking hands with the mayor, standing next to models at charity events. But in none of them did he have the same unguarded expression she'd glimpsed today when he spoke about his father's guitar. The night of the gala arrived faster than Hayley expected. The new Grayson Tower was a gleaming monument of glass and steel in the heart of downtown, its grand ballroom filled with the city's elite in designer formal wear. Hayley felt simultaneously underdressed and overdressed in her simple black gown, her guitar case clutched like a shield. Miss Keller. Warren's voice cut through her panic as he approached, looking distinguished in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. You made it, you look. He paused, his eyes taking her in appreciatively. Absolutely lovely. Thank you, she managed, trying not to fidget under his gaze. This place is incredible, Warren. I can't believe you built all this. Pride flickered across his face. 20 years of work in one building. Come, let me show you where you'll be playing. He guided her through the crowd, his hand occasionally touching the small of her back to navigate through clusters of guests. Each brief contact sent an unreasonable tingle up her spine. Warren, a statuesque blonde, intercepted them, air kissing his cheeks. Darling, this building is your masterpiece, absolutely divine. Thank you, Victoria. May I introduce Hayley Keller? She's performing tonight. Victoria's gaze swept over Hayley with polite disinterest. How lovely. Are you new to the circuit? I organize most of the charity functions in the city, and I don't believe we've met. This is my first corporate event, Hayley admitted. I usually play at smaller venues and teach guitar. Actually, Warren interjected, Hayley is my guitar teacher. Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose slightly. Guitar lessons? How? Unexpected. I didn't know you played. I'm learning, Warren said with a smile. Hayley is a remarkably patient instructor. Several other guests joined their circle, all curious about Warren's new hobby. Hayley watched as he fielded their questions with easy charm, noticing how he subtly redirected the conversation whenever it veered toward business. He seemed different here, more reserved, more guarded than during their lessons. When it was time for her to perform, Warren personally introduced her to the crowd. "It's my pleasure to present Miss Hayley Keller, an extraordinary musician whose talent is matched only by her teaching ability. I can personally attest to the latter." The audience chuckled appreciatively, and Hayley stepped up to the microphone, suddenly aware of hundreds of eyes on her. She took a deep breath and began to play. The first song was tentative, her fingers adjusting to the unfamiliar setting, but by the second, she had found her rhythm. She lost herself in the music, forgetting the wealthy audience, the intimidating venue, everything except the notes flowing through her fingers. When she looked up midway through her set, she found Warren watching her from the side of the room, a drink untouched in his hand. His expression was impossible to read from this distance, but she didn't need to see it clearly to feel its intensity. After her performance, the crowd's enthusiastic applause buoyed her confidence. Several guests approached to compliment her playing, and a few even inquired about lessons. Warren appeared at her side with a glass of champagne. "You were magnificent," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "Everyone is asking about you." "Thank you for the opportunity," she replied, accepting the champagne. It was terrifying but exhilarating. "The best things usually are." Warren's gaze held hers a beat longer than necessary. "Would you mind staying for a while? There's someone I'd like you to meet." The someone turned out to be Julian Banks, the owner of Harmony Records, one of the city's premier independent music labels. "Warren tells me you compose your own music as well," Julian asked after they'd been introduced. Hayley shot Warren a surprised look. She'd mentioned her compositions once in passing during a lesson. "Yes, I do, though most of my original work isn't as polished as what I played tonight." "I'd love to hear it sometime," Julian said, handing her his business card. "We're always looking for new artists with authentic voices. Warren speaks very highly of your talent." After Julian departed, Hayley turned to Warren. "You didn't need to do that." "Do what?" "Introduce you to someone who should hear your music," he shrugged. "It's just a connection, Hayley. What you do with it is entirely up to you." The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and conversations. By the time the event wound down near midnight, Hayley's feet ached in her unaccustomed heels, but her heart was light. She had a stack of business cards, a check that would cover 3 months' rent, and a strange, buzzing feeling whenever she caught Warren looking her way across the room. As the last guests departed, Warren approached her again. "Can I offer you a ride home?" "That's not necessary," she began, but he cut her off gently. "Please. It's late, and I'd feel better knowing you got home safely." His chauffeur-driven Bentley glided through the empty streets, the city lights painting watercolor streaks on the windows. Hayley sat beside Warren in the spacious backseat, suddenly aware of how close they were in the intimate space. "Thank you for tonight," she said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Not just the gig, but the introduction to Julian. That was thoughtful." "I've learned that success often depends on who you know," Warren replied. "You have the talent, I just provided an audience." When they reached her modest apartment building, Warren insisted on walking her to her door. "This is me," she said, fishing for her keys outside apartment 3B. "Not quite Grayson Tower, but it's home." "It has character," Warren observed, looking genuinely interested in the building's pre-war architecture. "My penthouse feels sterile in comparison." They stood facing each other in the dim hallway, the air between them charged with unspoken words. "I should go in," Hayley said finally, though she made no move to unlock her door. "Of course." Warren took a half step back. "I want to thank you, Hayley, for performing. It was my pleasure." "No," he shook his head, "for seeing me as just another student. For not treating me differently because of who I am or what I own. It's refreshing, Before she could respond, he leaned forward and kissed her cheek, his lips warm against her skin. "Good night, Hayley." She stood frozen as he walked away, her fingers touching the spot his lips had brushed, wondering when exactly her feelings for her wealthy student had become so complicated. The following Tuesday, Warren didn't show up for his lesson. No call, no text, nothing. Hayley tried not to feel disappointed as she used the unexpected free hour to work on a new composition that had been taking shape in her mind since the night of the gala. Her phone buzzed just as she was locking up the studio. "Hayley, it's Warren. I owe you an apology for missing today's lesson." "Is everything all right?" she asked, surprised by how relieved she felt just hearing his voice. "A crisis with our Chicago development. Nothing serious, but it required my immediate attention." He paused. "I was wondering if we might reschedule, perhaps dinner instead of a lesson." Hayley hesitated. "Warren, as friends," he added quickly, "or strictly professional if you prefer. I value our relationship and I don't want to cross any boundaries." The sincerity in his voice decided her. "Dinner sounds nice as friends." They met at Luciano's, an upscale Italian restaurant that normally required reservations weeks in advance. Warren was already seated when she arrived, rising to pull out her chair. "I took the liberty of ordering wine," he said, gesturing to the open bottle. "The owner recommended it specifically." "You know the owner?" Hayley asked, settling into her seat. Warren smiled ruefully. "I helped him secure financing for this location when no one else would take a chance on him. Now he treats me like family whenever I visit." Conversation flowed easily between them, touching on music, books, films, deliberately avoiding business and teaching. Hayley found herself laughing more than she had in months, drawn to Warren's dry wit and thoughtful observations. The expensive wine and intimate setting made it easy to forget that this man was both her student and a millionaire many times over. "Can I ask you something personal?" Warren said as they waited for dessert. Hayley nodded, curious. "Why teaching?" "With your talent, you could be performing professionally, perhaps recording. Why choose a small studio in a converted warehouse?" She considered her answer, tracing the rim of her wine glass. "Music was always my escape growing up. My parents divorced when I was young and I bounced between two homes that never quite felt like mine. Guitar became my constant companion." She smiled at the memory. "When I was 18, I had offers from several music schools, but then my mom got sick. Cancer. I stayed to take care of her, taught lessons to pay the bills. After she passed, I just kept teaching. There's something magical about watching someone connect with music for the first time. I can't imagine giving that up, even for a recording contract." Warren's expression softened. "That's remarkably selfless." "Not really. Teaching feeds my soul in a way performing for strangers never could." She tilted her head. "Your turn, why real estate? With your intelligence, you could have chosen any field." "Family legacy," he answered with a shrug. "My father built the company from nothing. I was groomed to take over from the time I could talk. It never occurred to me to do anything else." "Do you enjoy it?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. "I'm good at it," he said after a moment. "There's satisfaction in creating something tangible, in seeing a building rise where there was once nothing." "That's not what I asked." Warren's eyes met hers, and she saw vulnerability there that he rarely showed. "Lately, no. I've been going through the motions, building because that's what Graysons do. Until I picked up that guitar, I'd forgotten what it feels like to do something purely for the joy of it." Hayley reached across the table and briefly touched his hand. "It's never too late to compose a new melody for your life, Warren." His fingers captured hers before she could withdraw, holding them gently. "Is that what you're helping me do, Hayley? Compose a new life?" The question hung between them, weighted with meanings neither was ready to fully acknowledge. Their friendship evolved over the following weeks. Warren continued his lessons, making steady progress on the guitar while Hayley found herself looking forward to their sessions with an eagerness that both thrilled and concerned her. They began spending time together outside the studio, Warren attending her performances at local venues, Hayley accompanying him to art gallery openings and charity events. To the outside observer, they might have appeared to be dating, but both carefully maintained the pretense of friendship, neither willing to risk the comfortable connection they'd established. It was during one such evening, after Hayley had performed at a small jazz club downtown, that their careful balance shifted. They were walking along the riverfront, the city skyline reflecting in the dark water. "You played beautifully tonight," Warren said, his hands in his pockets as they strolled. "That last song, was that one of yours?" Hayley nodded, surprised he'd noticed. "I finished it last week. It's still rough around the edges." "It was perfect," he insisted. "Have you sent any of your compositions to Julian?" "Not yet. I've been busy with students, and honestly, I'm nervous about putting my music out there professionally. What if no one likes it?" Warren stopped walking and turned to face her. "Hayley, your music is extraordinary. It deserves to be heard." The conviction in his voice warmed her from within. "Thank you for believing in me." "Someone should," he said softly. "You spend so much time nurturing others' talents, you neglect your own." A cool breeze blew off the river, causing Hayley to shiver in her light jacket. Without hesitation, Warren removed his suit jacket and draped it around her shoulders. The wool was warm from his body, carrying the scent of his cologne. "Better?" he asked, his hands lingering on her shoulders. Hayley nodded, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, how easy it would be to close the distance between them. "Warren," she began, uncertain what she even wanted to say. "I know," he interrupted gently. "You're my teacher, I'm your student, there are boundaries." "Yes," she agreed, though the word felt hollow. "What if I wasn't your student anymore?" The question caught her off guard. "Are you quitting guitar?" Warren laughed softly. "No, I love our lessons, but I could find another teacher if that's what it takes to." "To what?" He took a deep breath. "To ask you out properly, to see if there's something real between us without the complication of our professional relationship." Hayley's heart raced. She'd been fighting her attraction to Warren for weeks, telling herself it was inappropriate, that he was just a student, just a friend. But standing here, wrapped in his jacket with his earnest eyes fixed on hers, those excuses seemed flimsy at best. "You don't need to find another teacher," she said finally. "But perhaps we should acknowledge that our relationship has already evolved beyond student and teacher." Relief washed over Warren's face. "Does that mean I can kiss you now?" "Because I've been wanting to do that since the night of the gala." Instead of answering, Hayley rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but deepened as Warren's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer. When they finally broke apart, both were slightly breathless. "I've been wanting to do that too," Hayley admitted with a small laugh. Warren smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious face. "So where do we go from here?" "I'm not sure," she answered honestly. "This is uncharted territory for me. Dating a student, dating a millionaire, both are firsts." "What if we just take it one note at a time?" Warren suggested, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "No pressure, no expectations, just us seeing where the music leads." Hayley nodded, liking the simplicity of his approach. One note at a time sounds perfect. The subsequent months passed in a harmonious blur. Warren continued his guitar lessons, though they now occasionally ended with kisses instead of payment. Their relationship deepened as they discovered the person behind the roles they'd initially assigned each other. Hayley learned that, despite his wealth, Warren preferred simple pleasures, homemade meals over expensive restaurants, quiet evenings listening to records over glamorous parties. He had a dry sense of humor that emerged when he was truly comfortable, and he sang off-key in the shower, a fact that amused her to no end. Warren discovered that Hayley was fiercely independent, stubborn about paying her own way despite the disparity in their finances. She had a collection of vintage vinyl that rivaled his own, and she wrote her best music in the middle of the night, often calling him to share a new melody at 3 in the morning. Their differences created occasional discord. Warren's business often demanded his immediate attention, leading to canceled dates and interrupted moments. Hayley sometimes felt overwhelmed by the opulence of his world, retreating into her more modest lifestyle when it became too much. But they learned to navigate these challenges, finding compromises that respected both their needs. Warren started blocking out uninterrupted time for their relationship in his meticulously kept schedule. Hayley grew more comfortable in his world, recognizing that the wealth was merely one aspect of the complex man she was falling in love with. 6 months into their relationship, Hayley received a call from Julian Banks. He'd heard a recording of one of her original compositions sent by Warren with her reluctant permission and wanted to discuss a potential recording contract. "This could be your big break," Warren said when she told him the news, his face alight with pride. "Your music deserves to be shared, Hayley." "I'm nervous," she admitted. "What if I'm not ready? What if I fail?" Warren took her hands in his. "Then you'll try again, but I don't think you will fail. Your music speaks to people. It certainly spoke to me." With Warren's encouragement, Hayley signed with Harmony Records. The subsequent months were a whirlwind of recording sessions, meetings with producers, and discussions about marketing strategies. Through it all, Warren remained her steadfast support, offering advice when asked but never attempting to control the process. "This is your dream," he told her. "I'm just honored to witness it unfolding." As Hayley's music career began gaining momentum, Warren faced his own crossroads. The board of Grayson Developments was pushing for expansion, proposing projects that would require more of his time and attention, just as Hayley was preparing for her first small tour. "I'm not sure I want this anymore," he confessed one evening as they sat on the balcony of his penthouse. The city lights spread before them like earthbound stars. Building bigger buildings, acquiring more properties, it feels empty somehow. Hayley studied his profile, noting the tension in his jaw. "What do you want, Warren?" He was silent for a long moment. "I want to build something meaningful, not just glass towers for the wealthy, but spaces that serve communities. Affordable housing, arts centers, places that bring people together rather than separate them by income brackets." "So do that," she said simply. "It's your company." "The board won't like it. The profit margins would be smaller." Hayley smiled. "Since when does Warren Grayson care what other people think of his decisions?" He laughed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "You have a point. I built this company. I can rebuild its purpose." In the following weeks, Warren began quietly restructuring Grayson Developments, shifting its focus toward community-centered projects. As expected, the board resisted, but Warren held firm, leveraging his majority ownership to push through the changes. "My father built this company to create wealth," he told the disgruntled board members. "I intend to use that wealth to create value beyond the balance sheet." While Warren reinvented his company's mission, Hayley's album was completed and released. The critical response was overwhelmingly positive, with reviewers praising her authentic voice and emotionally resonant compositions. Sales were modest but strong for a debut artist, and Julian was already talking about a follow-up album. On the night of Hayley's album release party, Warren surprised her by bringing his guitar, the same one he'd fumbled with during their first lesson over a year ago. "I've been working on something," he said when they finally had a moment alone. "A surprise." Before she could ask what he meant, he began to play. The melody was simple but beautiful, clearly composed with care. After a few measures, Hayley recognized it as a more elaborate version of the first exercise she taught him. "You wrote this?" she asked, amazed by his progress. Warren nodded, continuing to play. "I call it Lessons in Love. It's not very sophisticated, but it's honest." When he finished, Hayley was blinking back tears. "It's beautiful, Warren. You've come so far." "I had an excellent teacher," he said, setting the guitar aside, "in more ways than one." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Hayley's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a simple but stunning emerald ring. Hayley Keller, you came into my life when I was just going through the motions, building structures without purpose, accumulating wealth without joy. You taught me to hear the music again, to find meaning beyond success. Warren took her hand. I love you, will you marry me? Hayley's heart soared as she looked from the ring to the face of the man she'd come to love so deeply. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. As Warren slipped the ring onto her finger, she thought about the unlikely journey that had brought them together, a millionaire seeking guitar lessons, a teacher who'd shown him there was more to life than building empires. I never expected this when you walked into my studio, she said, admiring how the emerald caught the light. You were just supposed to be another student, Warren smiled, drawing her close. And you were just supposed to be my guitar teacher. Instead, you composed my future. He kissed her gently. Our future. 1 year later, they were married in the courtyard of the Harmony Center, the first of Warren's community-focused developments. The building housed affordable artist studios, performance spaces, and music classrooms where Hayley taught between recording sessions and small tours. After exchanging vows, Warren surprised the guests by picking up his guitar and performing Lessons in Love, now expanded into a full song with lyrics that told their story. Hayley joined him for the final verse, their voices blending as seamlessly as their lives had. As they celebrated with friends and family, Julian approached with news that Hayley's album had just gone gold. Congratulations, you two, he said, raising his glass. On the marriage and the album, it's rare to find success in love and art simultaneously. Warren's arm tightened around Hayley's waist. We've learned that the best compositions come from unexpected collaborations. Later that evening, as they danced under strings of lights in the courtyard, Hayley rested her head against Warren's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. Happy, he murmured against her hair. Completely, she answered, though I'm still getting used to being Hayley Grayson. I rather like the sound of it, Warren said, like a perfect chord progression, inevitable once you hear it. Hayley smiled, thinking of the journey that had brought them to this moment. From teacher and student to partners in every sense, they had composed a love story neither could have anticipated but both now couldn't imagine living without. What's our next movement? She asked, using the musical terminology that had become their private language for life plans. Warren twirled her gently under the lights. I was thinking a reprise of Just Us for a while, then perhaps adding some new instruments to the arrangement. Children. Hayley clarified, her heart warming at the thought. When you're ready, he said. Your career is taking off and I want to support that fully. Maybe sooner than you think, she replied, enjoying the surprise that bloomed on his face. I've been composing a lullaby lately, just in case. Joy transformed Warren's features as he processed her meaning. He lifted her off her feet in an exuberant embrace, his laughter joining hers in the perfect harmony they'd created together. From across the courtyard, their guests watched the happy couple. Unaware of the news they were celebrating but moved by the obvious love between them, the millionaire who'd learned that true wealth couldn't be measured in buildings or bank accounts, and the music teacher who'd helped him compose a life filled with meaning, purpose, and most importantly, love.